The last message. The rain tapped gently against Sarah's bedroom window, each droplet creating tiny rivers down the glass. She sat cross-legged on her unmade bed, surrounded by tissues and the soft glow of her phone screen. The digital clock read 2:47 a.m., but sleep felt impossible. Her thumb hovered over Jake's name in her contacts, trembling slightly with each breath she took. 3 weeks. That's how long it had been since their last conversation. 3 weeks since everything fell apart. In a cascade of misunderstandings and hurt feelings. 3 weeks of checking her phone every few minutes, hoping to see his name appear with a simple hey or even just an emoji. But the silence stretched on, thick and suffocating. Like fog rolling in from the ocean. Sarah's apartment felt different, without Jake's presence filling the spaces between her thoughts. The coffee mug he always used sat clean and untouched in her cabinet. His favorite playlist, the one they'd built together song by song over 6 months of dating, remained unplayed on her laptop. Even her cat, Whiskers, seemed to sense the absence, often staring at the door as if waiting for Jake's familiar knock. The fight had been stupid. So incredibly, painfully stupid. Jake had canceled their dinner plans to help his sister move, and Sarah had felt overlooked, unimportant. Her reaction had been swift and sharp, words tumbling out before she could catch them. "You always put everyone else first," she had said, her voice cutting through the phone like a blade. "I'm tired of feeling like an afterthought in your life." Jake's silence on the other end had been deafening. Then quietly he had said, "Maybe we need some space to figure things out." The line went dead, and with it, something precious between them seemed to die too. Now, in the gentle darkness of her room. Sarah scrolled through their old messages. Each conversation felt like looking at photographs of a life that no longer existed. There were good morning texts filled with heart emojis, silly memes they'd shared during work breaks, and late-night conversations that stretched until dawn. The evidence of their connection lived trapped in this digital archive, beautiful and untouchable. Her finger found the keyboard, and she began typing. "I miss you," she wrote, then immediately deleted it, too desperate. "Hey, how are you?" Delete, too casual. "I'm sorry about everything." Delete, too vague. Each attempt felt wrong, like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. Sarah set the phone down and walked to her kitchen, her bare feet cold against the hardwood floor. The kettle whistled softly as she prepared chamomile tea, the steam rising in delicate spirals. Through her kitchen window, she could see the city sleeping, streetlights casting long shadows on empty sidewalks. Somewhere out there, Jake was probably sleeping too, maybe dreaming of anything but her Dot. As she sipped her tea, Sarah remembered something her grandmother used to say. "Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is nothing at all." At the time, she hadn't understood. Her grandmother had been talking about a neighbor who'd lost her husband, explaining why they shouldn't keep bringing casseroles and checking in every day. "She needs space to grieve," her grandmother had said. "Our love can be a burden if we don't offer it at the right time." The words echoed in Sarah's mind now with new meaning. Maybe Jake needed space, not because he didn't care, but because he did. Maybe her urge to reach out, to fix things, to force a resolution, was more about soothing her own anxiety than actually healing their relationship. She thought about the morning of their fight. Jake had sounded tired on the phone, stressed about his sister's divorce and his demanding job. His cancellation hadn't been about choosing others over her. It had been about a man stretched thin, trying to show up for the people he loved in the ways he could. Sarah's hurt feelings had blinded her to his struggle. Back in her bedroom, she picked up her phone again. This time, instead of opening her messages, she opened her notes app. She began writing. Not to Jake, but to herself. "I was scared," she typed slowly. "Scared that I wasn't important enough. Scared that love meant always coming second. But maybe love isn't about being first. Maybe it's about understanding that sometimes the people we love are doing their best with what they have. The words flowed easier now, like water finding its natural course. She wrote about her fears, her insecurities, her tendency to read rejection into every postponed plan and delayed response. She wrote about Jake's kindness, his loyalty to his family, his quiet way of showing care through actions rather than words. As dawn approached, painting her room in soft shades of pink and gold, Sarah made a decision. She would not send that text. Not today. Not until she had worked through her own fears and could approach Jake from a place of understanding rather than need. Instead, she called her therapist's office and left a voicemail, scheduling an appointment for the following week. She called her best friend Emma and asked if they could meet for coffee, admitting that she needed someone to talk through her feelings. She made a list of things she wanted to work on about herself, independent of whether Jake ever came back. Into her life. Over the following days, Sarah found herself sleeping better. The constant urge to check her phone faded. She began taking long walks in the park, reading books that had been gathering dust on her shelf, and rediscovering parts of herself that had gotten lost in the intensity of missing someone. 2 months later, Sarah was arranging flowers at the farmer's market when she saw Jake across the square. Her heart fluttered, but not with desperation this time. With warmth and something that felt like gratitude. He looked good, relaxed in a way she hadn't seen in months. Their eyes met across the crowd. Jake's face broke into a tentative smile, and he began walking toward her slowly, as if approaching a wild animal he didn't want to startle. "Hi," he said, stopping a comfortable distance away. "Hi," she replied. They talked for 20 minutes. Carefully and kindly. Jake told her about his sister, who was doing better now. Sarah told him about therapy, about the things she'd learned about herself. They didn't rehash old wounds or make grand declarations. Instead, they simply reconnected as two people who had grown during their time apart. As they parted ways, Jake touched her arm gently. "I'd like to see you again if you're interested. Maybe we could start fresh." Sarah smiled, feeling lighter than she had in months. "I'd like that too." Walking home with her flowers, Sarah realized that not sending that desperate text at 2:47 a.m. had been one of the most loving things she'd ever done. For Jake, and for herself. Sometimes the most profound connections bloom in the space between wanting to reach out and having the wisdom to wait.